Good morning. A few brave souls join us today in the midst of the cold. Welcome. This is the February 6th meeting of the Rapid City Planning Commission. If either of you would like to speak to an issue, we have sign-up forms. Which direction? I don't know how you get there or how you hand them in, but bring those to us and we'll take those in the order in which they're received when we get to that item. And we ask that if you have a cell phone or a tablet or something that goes ding in the night, that you turn that to silent or off. Otherwise, the tradition is you bring donuts next meeting. Items 1 through 3 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 3, 13 PD 001. The Rapid City Planning Commission action on these items are final unless a party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Community Planning and Development Services Department by the close of business on the 7th full calendar day following this meeting. Are there any items 1 through 3 that staff would like removed? Council have any? Commission have any? Audience members? Chair would look for a motion on the consent calendar. Motion by Tim, second by Linda. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That would bring us to the regular agenda item. Number 4. Where are you?
Chair, the ordinance amendment on that is listed as item number 4 is just a simple change to the definition of structural alteration or structural change within the sign code to address maintenance of digital signs. Previously, the definition mostly addressed non-digital signs, traditional billboards, and so it's been updated to reflect an ability to do regular maintenance on digital signs without a sign building permit.
And so it makes it easier for our citizens to fix their digital sign.
Exactly.
Motion by Andy, second by Linda. Any discussion on the ordinance? Ordinance change? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's the shortest ordinance discussion in the history of this group. Thank you. Item number 5.
Morning. Item number 5 is conditional use permits allowing on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with a restaurant. This is for a new restaurant coming to town called El Mariachi. Take you through some slides. Property, it's an existing strip mall located on the north side of East North Street. We have Campbell Street intersection here. The property is zoned general commercial district. East North Street is identified as a principal arterial in the city's major street plan. There used to be a restaurant with on sale at the same location called El Ranchito, which has been closed for over 2 years, thus the need for a new conditional use permit. This is taking a look at the existing structure and the location of the proposed restaurant and on-sale liquor use. In addition to the restaurant, there is a Great Clips, an Asian grocery, and a cash spot located in this strip mall. Here is the site plan. There is additional parking located on the property to the north, and on that property there is a 6-foot screening fence to some residential zone property north of that. The businesses face south towards East North Street. This is an established commercial corridor. Here we have the layout of the interior of the, I'll turn it, of the proposed restaurant. One of the stipulations of approval is seating capacity of 50. Otherwise, the entire structure would need to be fire sprinkler protected. And here we have the proposed sign, which will be replacing the existing sign on the property. There are no schools or parks located within a 500-foot radius. The proposed on-sale use is in conjunction with a full-service restaurant, and it does not appear that it will cause any further blight or concentration within this commercial corridor. As such, staff recommends that the conditional use permit be approved with the stipulations as noted, and the applicant's agent is here for any questions.
Don't have any questions. Second by Tim, second by Andy to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I guess we're up to ex parte.
Mr. Chair, if we could do some housekeeping first, could we have you go back, make a motion to reconsider item number 4, which is the revision to the sign code? Carla would like to explain further exactly what it is that you're taking action on so that we're clear that you understand the motion before you. But we would need for you to make a motion to reconsider the item.
Motion by Andy, second by Linda to reconsider item number 4. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carla.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. There's a new draft of the ordinance that was up on the dais, and I didn't draw your attention to that. The change between what was linked and the version that you have in front of you is that we added language that says up to and including replacing the entire digital cabinet and adjusting the mounting methods as necessary. We added that language just to make it clear that they could actually remove the entire digital face if necessary to perform maintenance. So I think we need to take a new motion to approve the latest version of the ordinance. I apologize for not bringing that to your attention before.
Motion by Andy, second by Jan, to, what was it, the latest version? The latest version. Let's get it changed. Let's get it changed before it changes again. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
All right. We got it this time? Thanks, Carla. I think, are we coming back with some more about Karen Bowman's issue with regard to enforcement, with regard to signs or lights or something?
Yes, we are. Allison with the Attorney's Office, as well as Brad Solon and Code Enforcement, have met, and Karen did put us on notice that she would not be at today's meeting, but it is our intent to have them present at one of the future meetings and have them walk through how they address those code enforcement issues.
Very good. Are we done with signs? Ex parte.
Ex parte, thanks to all of you for responding to Andrea's request as to what meeting date may work best for you. It looks like the winner is March 27th. Please note that it's pretty important that both Brett and Walter be in attendance at that meeting. I think all of you have had at least one training on ex parte communication, and it's very important that we get everyone through that session at least once. So if for any reason you or Walter can't make it, we will reschedule that. But for now, our meeting is going to be March 27th. It's probably a 15-20 minute presentation from the attorney's office. And we'll put it at the well, it'll be an item at the end of the agenda.
Will that be a notice meeting?
The agenda gets noticed, so yes.
And we ask the commissioners not to speak to anybody about it before the meeting.
Or disclose it during the meeting.
How are we going to go through the lawsuit? Joel, I see you back there. Are you going to take us through the casino?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, Wade Nyberg from my office is the attorney that handled that case and has the most details on it. He had a family issue this morning and wasn't able to make it. I have a very cursory knowledge of it. My preference would be to continue it to your next meeting. The council has already decided not to appeal the case. We have some time, but I think we at least want to have a discussion again about if there's changes we can make or where we can go from here. And at this point, I feel Wade is the best prepared to address that. I can try to answer some basic questions if you have them, some of the history maybe. Otherwise, I would again ask that we consider continuing it to the next meeting.
Is Wade going to be, as he explains the case to us and some of the history, how we got to that point, going to bring forth any recommendations for ordinance change?
Well, we have previously brought forward ordinance change proposal, and frankly, it was not followed. I believe the city council decided to table it. So it's up to the committee. There might be some other things we could look at, but when you start talking about a solution, one of them, to get the discretionary out of it is to put just a hard, this is how many feet of a buffer we need. And if you don't have that, you're not going to get approved. And if you do have it, then you're approved. And that didn't, in my impression, that didn't seem ideal to people either. There's issues with either one. So we've had 2 cases now where the court has found you really didn't have a lot of discretion, that just somebody coming in and saying we don't think the buffering is sufficient without more evidence was enough to justify denial. So, it's something that we should at least look at and have a discussion about as a way to look at some other options, maybe with more discretion. But again, what it really comes down to is if the court looks at it and feels there really wasn't evidence to support the rationale for the denial, that it's really based on just the neighborhood's opposition. You can't deny somebody the use of their land because the neighbors are opposed to it. You are the city council, so that is going to be an issue. But again, I think Wade would be better equipped to deal with this conversation right now.
I guess while you're here, I do have a few questions on there. One, I hope that when Wade comes, you're exactly right. If a casino goes in and the neighborhood is up, then that is the group that shows up and what we spend a lot of time in the public hearing on. And the other issue is some people are just opposed to gaming and it's legal, so we hear that part of the discussion. So I guess probably the recommendations are going to need to come in the presentations in what we can consider and what we can't consider. In the past, I'm not sure that the police have brought us any statistical information about issues, crime, or adjacent to casinos in general, so that we can consider the safety aspect of it, which I don't know whether that's a contributing factor to the decision or not, but I guess probably we'll hear more about it when it comes.
Well, and I will say, the police haven't brought the information to you, but I believe the Haynes Avenue Casino, the council specifically requested it, and frankly, the information didn't work in favor of the denial.
Well, whether it works in favor or not of the denial or the approval, certainly I think if the neighborhood shows up, they're the ones that need to hear that. That's a big concern for many of them, I think.
Well, and the one thing about just doing a specific footage and say, this is how much we think you need to have to buffer it. Once that decision's made, it's really kind of out of your hands and the city council's hands. They're either in it or they're not. So when the people come in from the neighborhood, they can say their piece, but if they're outside the foot distance, it's approved. So take some of the pressure off you and the elected officials to deal with those specific issues in the specific neighborhoods, but it allows you to set a policy of generally we want to see some buffering between casinos and residential, and then just figuring out what that appropriate buffer area is. So.
Are we talking about the Haynes Avenue and the?
Actually, we're talking about specifically in this one, the Winia case down on Indiana.
It was Indiana Street, but they were very similar cases legally.
Yeah.
So.
Didn't some of that discussion have to do with density as well? I mean, wasn't that a lot of the neighborhood concern was density and location or?
Well,
Yeah.
the Winia case, as I recall, I mean, the neighborhood started right across the street from the lot.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, you can always argue density. I mean, if there's none there, you could argue, well, we don't want to start making this a casino area. If there's 4 there, you can say there's too many, and then on the other side, they argue, well, you've already got 4 casinos there, so what's one more going to make a difference? Frankly, I tried to make that argument in the Haynes Avenue case, was that there were already a couple casinos, and the corridor was improving, and we didn't want to see more casinos go in there. It didn't carry the day, obviously, so.
Now,
Whatever argument we make, generally there's a counter argument to it. So
now, if someone had to request a rezoning in order to qualify, they're only allowed in what, commercial zoned areas?
correct.
So if a rezoning request came forward, that would be a different consideration and could be denied.
It could be, but you don't always know what the person's going to do, or they may come in and say we're going to build a 4-unit commercial retail strip mall, and after you approve the rezone and they build it, a casino comes in and wants to rent it. Now, if it's MG Oil or one of the casino owner and operators, you probably have a pretty good idea that there's going to be a casino in there. But if it's not, you're not going to know. And I would
But I
caution
mean,
you.
denial of the rezoning on that basis would be different than issuing the casino conditional use permit, right?
It would be, but again, you're going to have other considerations. I mean, we went through this, frankly, with the Walmart when it was originally looking at locating on South 16. The opponents originally mounted the fight against the comp plan and having that area designated where the proposed Walmart was going to be located as commercial property. But that corridor, when you're fronting on Highway 16, that was going to be commercial property. It wasn't going to be residential. So it would have different problems. I'm not saying that, you couldn't look at it. But again, if it's viewed that you're just denying the rezoning, not because of the merits of the rezone, but because you're looking down the road and you think, well, this could potentially be a casino, that may be an issue. But again, if you look at this location, that block, I mean, you're pretty far off of Mount Rushmore Road by the time you get to Indiana Street. And it's all zoned commercial, and across the street there's residential property. So, that was going to be one of those tough areas no matter what you did with it. What do you do with that property? Because the closer you get to Mount Rushmore Road, they aren't going to want to do residential. It probably wasn't big enough for an apartment. Maybe it would have been, but it was zoned at some point commercial, and somebody came in and wanted to put a commercial use on it. So, but it shows you definitely need to be paying attention when you zone property for what could potentially go there.
Well, thanks for coming down this morning. We look forward to Wade bringing us his presentation. And any questions of Lundin before he leaves? Eric?
Well, one thing, when Wade comes back, I would like to have a little discussion on is that undue concentration idea, because I think video lottery is connected with with liquor, and one of the things when we have a conditional use permit, that's one of the guidelines that we have to judge, I believe. And that was my issue on the Indiana Street, I felt there was an undue concentration. If that's not a good guideline to use, if that opens us up to issues, then, I guess I'd just like an opinion on that, if that's if that's something a standard that we should clarify or look at how it's used.
Well, when you make a decision on a request like this, I like having you look at everything. If you feel there's an undue, throw that in there, put in the buffering, these are our issues, and line out your issues, because obviously the more you have to justify your action, the better off, or the more likely it is the court's going to say, we agree. The last two cases, all I can tell you is our experience is the concentration argument hasn't worked very well. It's really subjective, and again, the casinos can take the opposite argument. Some communities, they concentrate things like that. They kind of take the opposite. We don't want them over here, but we'll put them all here. So I think Brett probably wants to talk to you about the comprehensive plan. Is it on this issue or the next one?
Talk about the lease study.
Okay. So, and part of that, the new comp plan, maybe that would help with some of this too, with some of the land uses and how we're going to develop the property.
Any other questions of Mr. Lundin before he departs? Thank you, Joel. Brett?
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to give you a chance to respond to the Jim Lee study. As you know, he visited back in 2010 and came up with a list of initial recommendations for some ordinance changes and reorganization of the department. We had him back out here last year. Matter of fact, he visited with you towards the end of the year on the progress of this report. His charge last year was to take a look at the progress that was made from the 2010 report, and then also to give us some additional recommendations on revisions that we could make to our development review team process. The report was finalized late last year, and I've attached a work plan. There's a memorandum with a work plan for addressing each of the 16 recommendations that he made in that study. And I'm not sure if you've all had a chance to review that memorandum, but it gives you kind of what our game plan is for tackling these issues. A number of them, matter of fact, 5 of the 16 will involve a rewrite of our zoning ordinance. One of his recommendations is to take the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance and rewrite it. Several of the provisions, recommendations that he has in his study would be a part of that process. Essentially what you would end up with, rather than a zoning ordinance and a subdivision ordinance, is what we call a unified development code. And so all the regulations are in one place. Also involves significant reformatting of the document. For example, right now if you look at your zoning ordinance, each individual chapter, which has a district designation, has land uses that are allowed, land uses that are conditional use permits. It also has narratively described in there what the setbacks are, what the height restrictions are, and so forth. What you'll see in a modern unified development code is that the land uses are now in a table form. So essentially, the zone districts are along the top. All the land uses are in a running list all the way down the other side. And then you can go into the chart and figure out what's a use by right or what's a conditional use permit. Gives you the opportunity to compare districts across the board rather than having to go into each individual chapter to find that information. Similarly, the bulk standard requirements, all the setbacks, heights, things that have to do with locational criteria are also then placed in a table, so that again you have the zone districts across the top, list of the type of land use restriction along the list, and then you can go and see, you know, it's either a 5-foot setback or a 10-foot setback or a 50-foot height restriction. It's all, again, in one table so that you can compare districts side by side. It's a much more efficient approach to the construction of a zoning ordinance, and so our staff will be, I guess, knee-deep in doing that here fairly shortly, trying to reorganize that, and then we'll bring that back to you for review. One of the things that we had just discussed with respect to casinos, and this could also be for other uses, say, you know, for example, adult-oriented businesses. We'll take a look at other restrictions for these types of uses, and we can place those within the zoning ordinance. Right now, for example, casinos are regulated kind of backwards. Essentially, in order to run a casino, you have to have an alcohol conditional use permit. But you don't have anything to regulate casinos per se. And so I think what we need to do is just say, okay, if a casino is a conditional use permit, where is it a conditional use permit? What zone district? Also, what other additional restrictions would you want to put in that? So when you're looking at a conditional use permit for a casino use or an adult-oriented business, if there's a distance measurement requirement or if there's a buffering or screening requirement, those can be clearly laid out within the zoning ordinance. So that'd be another thing to consider when we bring this back to you. If there are other uses out there that you might find objectionable, we can create specific provisions for each of those uses. Mr. Chair, I want to just cover the Unified Development Code rewrite this morning, but there are a number of other recommendations in here, and rather than going through those one by one, I thought I might open up the floor and allow you to ask me any questions about the study, or if there's anything within the recommendations that is a particular concern or of interest of yours. Why don't you go ahead and let me know what that is, and I'll try as best as I can to explain what the recommendation means.
I have a couple that I'll just throw out, and then I'll let the commissioners ask their questions. But the new dirt, how that fits into how we do it now and how you would work. We also had a meeting earlier, and in the past, before the rewrite a couple years ago, we saw the plan, then we saw the preliminary plan, then we approved the final plan. We went through all of that, and as I recall from our conversation, if somebody brings a plat to us now, we really don't, it's sort of like the casino issue. We really don't have any authority at this level to do anything but look at it and pass it and send it on. And it's possible that those don't even need to come to us. I did tell or suggest that the plans in here significantly reduce the opportunity for the public to comment on development, and even if we don't have the authority to deny a plat, and we're not going to see it again after it comes forward, I think in many cases it gives the opportunity for the developer, if the case may be, and I'm thinking of that development across from the middle school, and people were concerned about the type of housing that was going to be going in there. As it turned out, it was a communication thing, I think, in the end. But the commission provides a hearing for that, and I think neighbors, although they can't stop people from development on the land adjacent to them, still look for an opportunity to find out what's going on. So I hope the new provisions don't entirely take out a hearing on some of those developments. And so I'll be looking for that as you go forward. Also, there's a recommendation in there I wish you'd speak to about combining some board work. I think the zoning board with the commission. I can't find it here. I'm looking at it.
Well, there is one recommendation.
The sign board, I'm sorry.
Yeah, is consolidating the Historic Sign Board into the Historic Preservation Commission, and we had spoke with the State Preservation Office, and they indicated that there wasn't an issue doing that. Right now, our Historic Preservation Board meets every other Friday, essentially, and then following that meeting, we have a separate meeting for folks who are, giving us applications for signs. If we can review signs, or if you're reviewing a building, you can certainly review a sign. So we don't need to have two separate boards to do one job. So we'll go ahead and make that consolidation as part of a rewrite of the Historic Preservation Commission guidelines as well.
Will we need some training if we're going to be doing that work compared to how we've done it in the past?
I'm not sure that we would combine that work into your agenda. I think we would keep one Historic Preservation Board and the Planning Commission separate. His main recommendation was consolidating the Historic Preservation Commission and the Historic Sign Board into a single board.
And that would not be our work.
That would not be yours. So
Would that then come to us before it goes to council, or how does that work?
What generally happens with a historic preservation application is it goes through that commission's review, it goes through a state review, and whatever recommendations come from both of those entities can be appealed to the city council. So if they were denied by both our local board and the state board, they could still go to council and get an appeal. So that's generally the process right now.
And then finally, a comment about using the comprehensive plan as a platform for this reform and as a roadmap for this city for the next unknown number of years. How will the comprehensive plan in your mind play into decision-making we make with regard to our work and council decisions?
If you look through the comprehensive plan, there's recommendations for new types of land uses. Mixed-use zone districts are within the plan. There's a district called Employment Center. So we're essentially going to be using that to create new zone district chapters. So that's one way that there'll be a direct link. The other one is when our staff is going to be making a recommendation to you, they're going to be looking into the comprehensive plan for guidance. And what they'll do is they'll say that the rezoning proposal in front of you or the conditional use permit proposal in front of you meets the following value or the following criteria that's within the plan. So you'll be able to then have a defense for your decision. So if it doesn't meet those criteria, we can recommend denial, and you can rest assured that that's a good recommendation.
And finally, there's one other district in there, and then I'll get off, Eric, so I'll get to you. What is that special district? I'm sorry, I just don't have this stuff in front of me. There's another district that's proposed in here for zoning.
You talking about the conditional zoning process?
Yes, the conditional zoning
Okay.
process.
Yeah, there's two recommendations in here. One of them is to repeal the planned development ordinance, and the other one is to enact conditional zoning. And they really really play together. Essentially, what's happened is the planned development ordinance has become a way for a developer to get multiple variances from district requirements rather than going to the Board of Adjustment. And the Board of Adjustment is really where you're supposed to go and ask for variances. The plan development has also been used to essentially allow somebody to rezone but save detail until a future date. So essentially someone can come in here and speculatively rezone a parcel of property from, say, residential to commercial, and you wouldn't have a plan to look at. So you would have to take it on faith that later on they were going to have to bring this plan development to you and get that approval. That's not a really good way of doing things because, you've got neighbors, concerned citizens in here during the rezoning hearing, and you don't have any detail that you can share with them, nor does the developer. In a conditional zoning process, at the very least, we need to have a conceptual plan from the applicant so that we can bring that to you and say, if you're going to rezone this property, this is essentially what the developer is planning on doing. And therefore, if there are additional buffering requirements that you would want, or something that goes above and beyond what the zone district standards are, you can condition the approval of that zoning on stipulations. So you could, for example, put restrictions on the height of the building if you wanted to, because the neighbor's concern was that the building was too high as allowed by that zone district. Keep in mind, the developer applicant would have to agree with that stipulation. So if they don't agree with it, they'll say, no, I don't agree to that stipulation, but at least you can have the discussion. And so that's a conditional zoning process, and I think that's a little bit better way of getting that information up front so that you're just not artificially inflating the value of a parcel of property without those details. That's a big shift.
Thank you. Eric Braun.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder. Those were the number 1 and number 8 were what I was interested in because they seemed crossways. When we're looking at the comprehensive plan, I guess some of the emphasis that we were talking about putting on certain types of development in certain locations, I guess I was thinking that the plan development would be one of the few tools that exist in order to do that. Do you think that this recommendation to repeal that while enacting conditional zoning, do you think that fits with what we're talking about in the new comprehensive plan?
Well, there's one process that is mentioned in this recommendation. It's called a plan unit development, and so we wouldn't be repealing the plan unit development. We just don't use it. It's currently on the books, and what a plan unit development would allow a developer to do is essentially create their own zone district. So what they would bring to you is a plat-sized document, and it would have a land use table in there that would say, here are all of the land uses that we're proposing. We're going to say that these are allowed by right, and these are conditional use permits, for example. They would have another chart in there that would say, here's all our setback height information and so forth. They would also have on top of that what's commonly referred to as a bubble diagram, so that you could see where the commercial was going to be and the residential was going to be and so forth. It wouldn't actually be shown with, as a plat type of document where you'd see all the streets, but it would say this 40 acres here is going to be commercial, for example, and this 60 acres is going to be mixed use or high-density residential development. And so that's really a tool that a developer can use to tailor, in particular, a large area, create a zone district that works for them. It's a better process than the PD. As I said, the PD is really just a variance document. It doesn't allow people to vary land use. So you still have to use only those underlying land uses that are in the district. So I think between the conditional zoning process and the plan unit development, you'll have all the tools, as will the developer, that they need to do what it is that they need to do. And the PD just ended up being this tweener that was really kind of an end run around the Board of Adjustment. Yeah.
Andy Scull.
I think you, sorry, I think you answered my question. But the existing PCDs, so they would stay in existence as they are today. So that doesn't get unraveled. It's just how do we move forward beyond there?
Yeah, and that's what I'll be working with Joel and Carla on. Is we're going to have to take a look at, okay, what all these items that are on the books, we can't wipe them out. However, there's a transition that we have to make. So essentially, if a developer came in and said, I voluntarily want to get rid of this PD, obviously we would allow them to do that in favor of a PUD or just a straight conditional zoning process. If they wanted to keep what's already on the books, we'd have to allow that. So there is a kind of a transition or stepping off point, and so that would have to be pointed out in the zoning ordinance rewrite.
Okay, thank you. A couple more comments and questions. One of the action items was to create a more friendly, customer-centric approach planning staff.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to commend the planning department. I feel that you guys have done that very well. And from my own perspective and from what I'm hearing in the public. So I think you've done a tremendous job of turning that around and focusing on customer service. So that's a compliment to you guys today. with John's questions, you talked a lot about the comprehensive plan. And I have a couple concerns with the comprehensive plan. Now, I think that the consultant is doing a very good job, but we're going to rely upon this heavily in the future. My concerns are that when we have these, I've been to a couple of these meetings, and they're relatively large meetings, and nobody wants to say anything. You know, so I don't feel like there's a lot of feedback. I may be wrong, but you know, something I've learned recently is sometimes it's better to have small groups. You start as a big group, you split into, you know, 4, 5, 6 person groups where you get a lot more conversation going, and then you reconvene back together and you share what you found versus having 30 people and nobody wants to talk. So, and it feels like it's going fast, and from where it's at now, from draft to being final. And I just look at it, and usually I'm in favor of things that happen quickly because nobody has a lot of time to put it on the shelf and sit on it. However, I'm a little bit concerned that it's going very fast, and now we have it done, and it's not usable, or we're relying upon something that maybe a lot of feedback wasn't given on. So that's just a comment. I don't know if this is the right time to mention that, but I feel like a lot of these things that have been recommended and we're moving on tie back to a comprehensive plan. You know, I think about when you do a rezone, you also fill out a comprehensive plan amendment. So we're changing something that was already done. So how do we address that in the future?
Well, a couple of things. This comprehensive plan is a dynamic document, so it's meant to be updated. Generally what will happen is either quarterly, biannual, or annually, you'll take all the amendments that you want to make and you'll bring them back before Planning Commission and say, here are the things that we want to add, or here are the things that we want to remove or tweak. And you'll review those and you'll make a decision on whether or not you want to do that. It goes to council, obviously, for final approval. So I wouldn't worry too much about just saying, you know, looking at this as some sort of static document that we have to live with. There will be plenty of opportunities to revise it. The other thing is, what I've found is that a lot of times folks wait till they see the draft before they start making comments, and so we're getting a lot of information now from the folks that were in the meetings. We're getting letters, and we're getting phone calls, and we're getting, you know, faxes, and our consultants have a website that's open, and so they're getting a lot of comments as well. And in this kind of preliminary information process, I think people aren't really sure what to expect, and so that's probably why they aren't saying as much. Now that they have it in front of them, we're hearing a lot more. This document's going to have to come back for Planning Commission to review, and you're going to be able to, at that point, say, you know, I think you need to add this or remove this or whatever recommendations you want to make, and of course that's a public hearing as well. So you'll probably hear a lot more comment as this thing moves through the approval process. So, I'm excited that we are getting more comment now, and we were concerned about that too. It's hard to invite the public to come in and give us comments, and then unfortunately they either show or they don't show, or they show up sporadically. So I think you'll find that this is there's a lot more interest in this as we move towards the finish line. Yep.
What schedule do you see with regard to the work that needs to be completed in the comprehensive plan before it would be on our agenda?
Right now, our consultants are taking all these various communications and they're trying to integrate them into, for lack of a better term, a final draft. And we'll be taking that to council at their council retreat in March. We'll be bringing it back for you to look at, obviously, and you're not under any obligation to approve it once it's presented to you. I think it might be best for us to take this to you at more of a study session rather than a meeting, and so that you can kind of grind through it and let us know what you think about it before we bring it back to you for a formal hearing on it.
And I understand that we're not the approving body in here, that the council has that determination. However, at least with regard to development and transportation, some of those issues that are in the plan, the proposed zoning districts, land use districts, I do believe that some of the work that we'll have in the future will revolve around that. And in general interest, I have asked that we have presentations before us, whether it's a study group, and I certainly think that would be a good idea. but also if the public wants to see a discussion on the final, whether it's here or in front of the council, that's important. Amanda Scott, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments that I'd like to let you know too, Brett, because I have been attending the comprehensive plan meetings as available, and I believe Mr. Skull and Mr. Brewer both have valid points. There's a lot of expertise on this panel, and it's going to be the city council that actually approves the final comprehensive plan. I think Mr. Skull has a very valid point of having the smaller groups, and if that can be fit into the comprehensive plan meetings going forward, of having that general meeting and then breaking out to small sessions and then coming back and maybe get that dialogue going. I believe in the comprehensive plan meetings that I've attended, the council members themselves have been very vocal. I'm not so sure there was any substance, but we're all known to talk a lot. So I would like to see this discussion with more expertise and be able to get those ideas going back and forth, because I think that would be very, very helpful. And then also just a point to Mr. Skull as far as what he was asking is, and I've asked this several times, this comprehensive plan, even though major amendments are made to it, this document, as you stated, is a living document, and it's more of a guideline than it is a manual. So thank you. But I would encourage incorporating what Mr. Brewer and Mr. Skull said this morning. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I need to go back to a zoning issue on there. You explained the conditional zoning process, and I appreciate that. We have had spot zoning issues before us, which are troubling. How are those going to be dealt with as we go forward?
Well, you know, you can do that a couple of different ways. Either you can put a restriction within your code that doesn't allow it, or you can look at these on a case-by-case basis, and so that you can, you know, make that determination on whether or not, in any case, it's worthwhile to do a spot zoning. So it's kind of depending on what your comfort level is. I always like to, you know, try to encourage you, recommend that you don't do spot zoning, but I'm a little leery of doing an outright prohibition on it.
Well, I know in the years that I've been on the commission, we've had good solutions to spot zoning in especially areas and corridors that are developing. And we've also denied a lot, tend to be denials in residential areas, but in developing commercial corridors, buffers have been used because sometimes you're up against it. And so you have that. But I think I'll be looking for some of that to see in there too. So if you'd pay some attention in the effort, I think there are several on the commission that will be interested in that. Anybody else have any comments with regard to the plan? Good comments.
I like what Brett said about spot zoning, that, you know, you have to look at it carefully, but there shouldn't be an outright prohibition of it. Because what is spot zoning? Is it, you know, if you had 4 squares and then you had a corner touching, is that still spot zoning? You know, or does spot zoning mean it's a complete parcel away? You know, so I think your answer to that question was pretty good. I feel the Planning Commission's done a good job of finding solutions, and frankly, we haven't allowed a lot of spot zoning, but there has been some cases where I think we've done a good job on that.
I think it's always boiled down to use.
Yeah.
Not the fact that it was going to be a spot zone. It turned out that the use came to us in conjunction with that, and if the use was not appropriate, I think we were able to discover that or make it appropriate in some way with buffers or whatever. And I agree with you, Commissioner Skull. That's a work that we've done, but it's an issue that comes back and back.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, that's another benefit to the conditional zoning process. I mean, it would be one of those things, if someone is making a specific proposal and you're a little uncomfortable with it, at least you've got a site plan on your desk that you're looking at, and you can add whatever stipulation you think is appropriate, provided the applicant agrees with it. So that gives you some flexibility and some control.
Well, I thank you for your presentation. Obviously, I hope the rest of us, as you do, feel that the comprehensive plan development has been a good discussion by the community of what we want to be and where we want to go. And so for those comments and discussion this morning, I thank everyone. I don't have any other lights up. Is there anything else that we need to discuss today? Vicki? Brett? In that case, I would look for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Tim, second by Andy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.